I used to think winter arguments were just part of living in a place like northern Michigan. You know, frozen pipes, passive-aggressive neighbors, somebody always claiming somebody else stole their parking spot after a snowstorm. But what happened with the condo people next door turned into the kind of petty suburban war that makes you question how far grown adults will go just to avoid being inconvenienced for 5 minutes. And honestly, the crazy part wasn't even the snow. It was how casually they acted like my property belonged to them. Like if they ignored me long enough, I'd eventually give up and shovel their mess forever. It started after the first major storm in January, one of those heavy wet snowfalls that makes the whole neighborhood sound muffled and dead quiet overnight. I walked outside around 6 a.m. with coffee in one hand and instantly stopped at the end of my driveway because there was this solid ridge of ice and packed snow blocking my car in, maybe a foot high, ugly but normal enough. City plows do that all the time. They clear the road. The snow has to go somewhere. You curse under your breath and start shoveling. So that's exactly what I did. Took maybe 20 minutes, no big deal. But then the second storm hit 3 days later, and suddenly that little ridge turned into a frozen wall dam near up to my knees. I'm talking dense, gray, compacted snow that felt like somebody poured concrete across the entrance to my driveway overnight. Took me almost an hour just to clear enough space to get my truck onto the street. And while I was hacking away with a steel shovel, sweating through 2 layers of clothes in 15-degree weather, I noticed something weird. The pile wasn't centered where the city plow normally pushed snow. It was angled, like somebody intentionally redirected it. Now next to my house, there's this small condo complex called Pine Hollow Estates, about 12 units, mostly retirees and the kind of people who write emails about mailbox paint colors. They had their own private snow removal company. This old red pickup with a plow attachment driven by a guy named Rick, heavy-set dude. Mirrored sunglasses even when it was cloudy. Looked like the human version of a cigarette stain. At first I didn't think much about him because he'd come through around dawn, scrape their lane clean, then disappear. But after that second storm, I started paying attention. Third snowfall came 2 nights later and around 5:30 in the morning I heard the scraping sound outside. Metal against pavement. So I killed the kitchen lights and watched through the window. Sure enough, Rick cleared the condo lane in one smooth pass. Then right before reaching my property line, he angled the blade hard left and dumped the entire load directly across the mouth of my driveway, like he was unloading gravel. Clean entrance for the condos, snow fortress for me. I remember just standing there staring at him thinking, no way this dude thinks I don't notice this. So later that afternoon, I walked over while he was salting the lot and said, "Hey man, you keep pushing snow into my driveway." And this guy barely even looked at me. He shrugged and goes, "Easiest push line, buddy, everybody does it. Everybody does it." Like that magically made it okay. I told him my driveway wasn't part of the condo property and I wasn't interested in spending every storm cleaning up after his shortcuts. He nodded like he understood, climbed back into the truck, and drove away without another word. Next storm, same thing. Except now the pile was even bigger, almost like he took the conversation personally. That's when I contacted the condo manager. This woman named Denise Harper, very polished, fake warm smile. The kind of HOA personality that somehow sounds annoyed even while saying, "I completely understand your concern." She told me their plow contractor was highly experienced and would never intentionally block access to a homeowner's driveway. Then she hit me with the classic line. "It's probably the municipal plows causing the issue." Right. Because apparently city plows now make perfect diagonal piles that start exactly at the condo entrance and stop exactly at my mailbox. So before the next storm, I bought these bright orange driveway markers from the hardware store and stuck them along the edge of my property. Clear as day. Impossible to miss unless you were legally blind or just didn't care. Storm rolls in overnight. Snow starts dumping hard around midnight. And around dawn here comes Rick again, headlights cutting through the snow like some low-budget horror movie villain. I watched him slow down when he saw the markers, actually slow down. And for 1 second I thought maybe that was it. Maybe he finally got the message. Nope. He turned the blade anyway and buried half the markers under another avalanche of packed snow like he was making a point. And standing there at my window, watching my driveway disappear for the 4th time in 3 weeks, I realized this wasn't laziness anymore. This was territorial. This was one of those neighborhood power games where somebody decides your inconvenience is acceptable because confronting them feels uncomfortable. And the worst part? They were counting on me staying polite forever. Now let me pause the story for a second, because if you've ever dealt with an HOA, condo board, or even one overly entitled neighbor, you already know this situation stopped being about snow a long time ago. What Rick was doing wasn't random, and Denise pretending not to notice it. That wasn't random either. According to standard procedure in most private snow removal contracts, operators are supposed to avoid obstructing adjacent private access points, especially residential driveways. That's basic liability prevention. Any experienced plow driver knows if you repeatedly dump compacted snow onto someone else's property, eventually you create a safety issue, blocked emergency access, slip hazards, vehicle damage, all kinds of stuff insurance companies absolutely love arguing about later. From a legal perspective, the second I documented repeated intentional dumping onto private property, the whole thing shifted from annoying winter inconvenience into potential property interference. And trust me, HOA boards hate paper trails more than lawsuits, because once there's video evidence, emails, timestamps, and ignored complaints, suddenly everybody starts talking in softer voices. But honestly, the legal side wasn't even the most interesting part to me. The psychology was. This is a psychological trap people fall into all the time in suburban communities. Somebody keeps pushing a boundary in small ways because they're testing how conflict-averse you are. First it's snow, then it's parking, then it's noise. Then somehow your property becomes the community overflow zone because nobody ever pushed back hard enough to make the behavior inconvenient for them. Rick thought I'd keep absorbing the problem because most people do. Denise thought if she sounded professional enough, I'd eventually accept the extra work as part of winter living. That's the game. They inconvenience one person slightly to benefit a larger group, then rely on social pressure to keep that person quiet. The lesson here is, once people realize there are zero consequences for disrespecting your boundaries, they usually don't stop. They escalate. And unfortunately for them, I had finally reached the point where being polite was costing me more energy than fighting back. So after that fourth storm, I stopped arguing. Seriously, no more polite conversations, no more standing in somebody's office listening to fake sympathy while they secretly hoped I'd just get tired and go away. I'd already tried reasonable. Reasonable got me buried under 3,000 pounds of frozen slush every week. And once you realize somebody benefits from your patience, you start seeing the whole thing differently. So instead of complaining again, I bought a camera. Nothing fancy, just a weatherproof security cam mounted under the corner of my garage facing the driveway entrance. Cost me maybe $90. Best investment I made all winter. Because 2 storms later, I finally had exactly what I needed. Crystal clear footage. Timestamped. You could literally watch Rick finish plowing Pine Hollow Estates, pause near my property line, crank the wheel, angle the blade, and dump the entire snow load directly across my driveway like he was frosting a cake. Over and over. Not accidental. Not drift. Not city plows. Deliberate. And the craziest part? He looked comfortable doing it. Like this had worked on other people before. So I took screenshots from the footage, attached the videos, and emailed Denise and the condo board. Kept the message short too, professional, calm, impossible to twist around on me. I basically said, here is documented evidence of your contractor repeatedly obstructing access to my property after prior verbal notice. Please confirm this will stop immediately. That was it. No threats. No attitude. And then, silence. 3 days passed. Nothing. Another storm warning rolled into town, and still not a single response. At that point I actually laughed because the arrogance was almost impressive. They genuinely believed they could ignore me until winter ended. That's when I walked into my garage and looked at my snowblower sitting against the wall. Now this wasn't one of those little electric toys people use on apartment sidewalks. This thing was a beast, an industrial Arians model with metal augers and enough horsepower to launch snow halfway across a yard if you angled the chute right. I bought it after a blizzard a few years back and honestly barely used it because my driveway wasn't that big. But standing there staring at it, I had one very simple thought. If they insist on delivering snow to my property, maybe I should return it. And before anybody gets dramatic in the comments, no, I wasn't trying to damage cars or start some psycho neighborhood feud. That's what made the whole thing beautiful. I wasn't going to destroy anything. I was just going to redistribute inventory back to the original owner. So the next storm hits, about 8 inches overnight, heavy wet snow again, the kind that sticks to everything. Around 5 a.m., I hear Rick's plow scraping through the condo lane. Sure enough, by sunrise there's another massive pile sealing off my driveway entrance like a medieval barricade. I looked at it for maybe 10 seconds, nodded to myself, and went back inside. Didn't shovel. Didn't touch it. I waited. That part mattered. See, by late afternoon the condo lot was fully cleared. Residents had parked neatly in their spaces, sidewalks salted, everything looking nice and organized. Exactly how Denise liked it. Around 7 p.m. the snowfall finally stopped and the whole neighborhood went quiet. Just porch lights glowing through the foggy air, that weird stillness winter gets at night where you can hear machines from blocks away. Then I opened my garage, fired up the snowblower. And let me tell you something. If you've never heard a high-powered snowblower kick on in a silent suburban neighborhood after dark, it sounds like a lawnmower and a chainsaw had a baby. The engine roared to life, headlights cutting across the snow, exhaust steaming into the cold air. I walked it slowly toward the giant pile at the end of my driveway like I was lining up artillery. First pass, WHOMP. A stream of packed snow launched 30 feet through the air and landed neatly along the outer edge of the Pine Hollow parking lot. Not on vehicles, not on sidewalks, just right back onto the property where it started. Second pass, third pass, chunk after chunk disappeared from my driveway and reappeared along the condo snowbank line. And honestly, it was incredibly satisfying. Not because I was winning, but because for the first time all winter, the inconvenience was flowing in the correct direction. The funniest part was how careful I was. I made sure every blast avoided cars by several feet. I avoided walkways. I wasn't vandalizing anything. Technically speaking, I was probably the safest snow removal guy on the entire street that night. 40 minutes later, my driveway entrance was completely clean, and Pine Hollow suddenly had a much tighter parking edge than before. Nothing dangerous, just inconvenient enough that their precious plow lines were no longer perfect. I shut off the machine, looked at my now clear driveway, and slept better than I had in weeks. Next morning around 8 a.m., I heard the sound I'd been waiting for, Rick's truck returning. I peeked through the blinds and almost lost it laughing. This guy was out there replowing the condo edges because several parking spots suddenly had snow creeping too close to the lines. Residents were outside pointing around, confused, one older guy waving his arms like the parking lot had personally betrayed him overnight. And there was Rick, redoing work he never would have had to do if he'd just left my driveway alone in the first place. That afternoon my phone rang. Denise. Her tone had changed completely. Gone was the polished HOA customer service voice. Now she sounded tight, controlled, careful. She asked, "Mr. Carter, have you been moving snow from your property onto Pine Hollow grounds?" And I swear there was this long pause before I answered because I wanted her to hear how calm I was. I said, "No, Denise. I returned snow that originated from Pine Hollow property." Silence. Dead silence. Then she goes, "Well, residents are complaining the lot had to be cleared again this morning." I almost admired the audacity. Like somehow I was supposed to feel guilty because the extra labor had finally become their problem instead of mine. So I told her exactly what I'd wanted from the beginning. Nothing dramatic. No money. No revenge fantasy. I said, "I want written confirmation that your contractor will stop using my driveway as a snow dump site." Another pause. Then she tried one last little power move. "I'm sure we can work something out cooperatively." There it was. HOA language for please stop making this difficult publicly. But I wasn't done yet. I told her if it happened again, I'd start billing the condo association for snow removal labor since I was apparently part of their maintenance operation now. And suddenly Denise became incredibly reasonable. Funny how fast professionalism appears once inconvenience changes direction. Later that evening, I got an email from the condo board confirming the plow contractor had been instructed to avoid depositing snow onto adjacent private property. Real official-sounding language, too, probably written by somebody terrified of future liability. After that, complete transformation. Next storm, I watched Rick approach my driveway and physically turn the blade away from my property before passing the entrance. No pile, no frozen wall. Just a normal manageable amount from the city plow. Another storm came the following week, same thing. It was honestly incredible watching how quickly the impossible situation magically became solvable once the consequences affected the right people. And here's the part that still makes me laugh. The condo residents probably think their HOA fixed the issue through good management or communication or whatever story Denise told them in her little monthly newsletter. But the truth is way simpler than that. Boundaries only matter after somebody proves ignoring them will become expensive, annoying, or embarrassing. That's it. Human behavior is unbelievably predictable sometimes. People will take the easiest path available right up until that path starts leading back toward them. And every time it snowed after that, I'd watch Rick carefully steer the blade away from my driveway like it was radioactive. No eye contact, no attitude, just business. Because deep down, we both understood the new arrangement perfectly. He could keep his shortcut, or he could keep redoing his parking lot at midnight. And suddenly my driveway stopped looking like the easiest option. You know what's funny? Looking back now, the whole thing sounds ridiculous. Grown adults quietly waging war with snow piles in a suburban neighborhood like it's some kind of frozen mafia dispute. But honestly, situations like this happen everywhere, just with different costumes. Sometimes it's parking spaces. Sometimes it's fences, noise complaints, trash cans, tree branches, HOA violations, whatever tiny piece of territory people think they can slowly claim because nobody wants confrontation. And that's really what this story was about underneath all the snow: boundaries. Not the angry, screaming kind. Not the internet tough guy version where everybody fantasizes about lawsuits and revenge. I mean normal, healthy boundaries where you calmly tell somebody, "Hey, this affects me. Please stop." The problem is, some people hear politeness as weakness. They assume if you stay calm, you'll stay passive forever. And once that assumption settles in, they start pushing further because inconvenience is addictive when somebody else absorbs the cost. That's why the condo board ignored me at first. From their perspective, sacrificing one homeowner's driveway was easier than changing the plow route for 12 residents. Cold math. Efficient math. HOA culture sometimes creates that mentality where convenience becomes more important than fairness, especially when the person getting inconvenienced isn't inside the community itself. From a legal perspective, they probably realized way too late that documented evidence changes everything. Emails, timestamps, video footage, that stuff turns neighbor drama into liability exposure real fast. According to standard procedure, once management becomes aware of a recurring property obstruction issue and ignores it, they risk becoming part of the problem legally. And trust me, no condo board wants a paper trail showing they knowingly dismissed complaints tied to contractor behavior. But psychologically, that's the part one keep thinking about. This is a psychological trap people walk into constantly. They tolerate disrespect in small doses because each individual incident feels not worth fighting over. One snow pile, one blocked driveway, one passive-aggressive comment, one little inconvenience at a time, until eventually somebody else has rewritten the rules around your own space, and now you're exhausted protecting something that should have been respected automatically. The lesson here is, you teach people how to treat you by what you quietly continue tolerating. And no, I'm not saying every disagreement deserves retaliation with power equipment in the middle of the night. Honestly, if they had just apologized after the first conversation, none of this would have happened. But there's also something deeply satisfying about solving a problem without screaming, threats, or destruction, just consequences. Clean, fair, undeniable consequences. In the end, I didn't win because I embarrassed anybody. I won because the behavior stopped. My driveway stayed clear. The boundary got respected. And weirdly enough, after that winter, nobody from Pine Hollow ever bothered me again. Not once. It's amazing how peaceful neighbors become after they realize you're no longer willing to carry their problems for them. So now I'm curious, what would you have done in my position? Would you have kept documenting everything and gone legal? Would you have confronted the HOA harder from the start? Or would you have done exactly what I did and given every shovel full right back where it came from? Let me know in the comments, because I swear every neighborhood has at least one story like this, and somehow, it's never really about the snow.